Hello, and welcome to the video. Today I wanted to show you how I do tapestry weaving on a frame loom. Right now you're watching me do the warp strings. I use this cotton string here that I unfortunately don't remember what it's called. I threw away the wrapper a while ago, but it's nice and strong. Just tightening up the strings here, making sure everything is good to go. And then I place in this bit of cardboard at the bottom to give me space. This is a wooden tapestry needle that I made myself using a wooden dowel. This is about 12 inches, I believe. I like it's nice and pointy. And then I have two others here. One is, I think, about 9 inches and one about 6 inches. I don't use them as much since they are smaller, but they are good if I need to do anything extra with yarn. Now I'm just doing a bit of securing stitches here at the bottom and some plain weave, which is just going back and forth through the warp strings. This is the brand of yarn I use for the most part. It's Lion's brand, Wool Ease Thick and Quick. This particular color I use for the tassels at the bottom, and this is in the color Oatmeal. It's really good for tapestry weaving because it takes up a lot of space. And here you can see me just doing the tassels now at the bottom. This first color is a beautiful green that I do at the bottom here in more plain weave. This next yarn is a beautiful hand-spun yarn that I bought off Etsy. I will have the shop linked in the description below. It has such wonderful fibers and colors spun into the yarn that is just so beautiful to work with. I'm definitely going to be buying more from this shop. And something about hand-spun yarn really leads itself to just kind of going with the flow. I love working with this yarn, and you can see I start doing these loops that are just so erratic. Like there's no rhyme or reason to the way that I'm looping this yarn because I'm really just letting the texture of it tell me what to do with it. And you can see that this yarn has these beautiful strands of, I think, silk that just hang off of it, and you can have them draping down the tapestry like I do. And here I'm just doing some more of that green yarn and doing this loopy twisty texture to give it more dimension. This next yarn that I'm using is this beautiful multicolor yarn. I'm only using the blue section here to create kind of a water lake kind of section of the tapestry. Next I'm using this blue and gray yarn to create another little section of water, if you will. And you may be wondering why I'm only using half of the warp strings on the tapestry. It's because I plan on making a skinny but really long tapestry, and I will be joining the two ends together later in the video. This next color I'm using is like kind of a sand color, and I kind of see it as like either like the beach, the shore, or maybe even like cliffs to the next section of the tapestry. Next I got this really interesting yarn. It's flat and it has these kinds of little lines in between the two flat sides, and I'm just cutting short pieces and attaching them like I did with the tassels at the bottom of the tapestry. And you'll see that I'll actually be cutting them even shorter because I didn't want to cover up too much of the blue yarn underneath. Next, I'm using this yarn that is a green and purple ombre. Right now I'm just using the green section to kind of create more grass looking area. And after I will be using the purple section to do this loopy texture, utilizing my other tapestry needles to kind of keep those loops in place while securing the loops. And then I can see I'm moving up the tapestry as I go. This next yarn that I'm using is actually left over from a crochet project. You can see it's much thinner and it's a 4-weight yarn, and it's variegated with these greens and blue, and I actually double it up a couple times so that it's thicker and it has this really interesting mixing of the 3 colors across the whole piece as I weave. This is a beautiful, like, sunsetty kind of yarn, and at first I'm using it, as you can see, this kind of darker purple, and then I let the whole thing gradate up through the colors, and I will be doing plain weave with this yarn for the rest of the first half of the piece. I do pause to take this orange yarn and kind of tie it in between the plain weave to kind of give some interesting texture and visuals. I kind of see it as like flowers in a flower field. This is a new day, and I actually added more tassels to the bottom in between the 2 days, so it's much thicker and it covers the bottom better. But I'm continuing to plain weave across the top until the very end, where I do a securing stitch, and then continuing with this yarn at the bottom of the second half. Here's the next yarn that I'm using, this blue-green, as I do this same thing as I did with the tapestry needles on the first half, this looping texture, but I'm using my fingers to kind of pull the loops to be much bigger and floppier. The next color that I'm using is this pale blue, and this is kind of the start of the sky portion of the tapestry, and you'll actually see me using this white yarn with rainbow tinsel through it to make these clouds throughout the sky. And I just kind of wrap it around the warp strings and then double back on top of it to create these really cool puffy clouds. And here I'm starting with this denim blue yarn to start going back and forth between the light blue and the dark blue to make a darker sky. You can see I'm like doing 1 row of dark blue and then multiple of light, and then decreasing the light blue between the dark blue, and then increasing the dark blue as I decrease the light blue to create this gradient of a night sky. You may have noticed that there are 2 warp strings in the middle that I am not touching. That's actually a mistake. I noticed after finishing the first half that I miscounted the warp strings when I started and made it 1 string shorter than I wanted to. So to keep them both the same width, I had to also miss 1 string on the second half so that they would both match. This last yarn is a beige with a gold tinsel, and I want it to look like a setting sun, but unfortunately it's just not bright enough of a yellow, so it doesn't really look like one. You can actually see here the black thing that I'm using to push down the yarn is basically a large plastic comb. It came in a different frame loom kit that I bought, and really it's just to help you better push down the yarn to make sure everything's really tight and compact. I've now finished the piece. I have flipped the entire loom upside down, so this is the back, and I'm taking a long plastic needle with a large eye and weaving the ends of each piece of yarn into the back, making sure that I don't go through to the front. This is both to secure the yarn so nothing can be pulled out, and also so that you don't have all these loose ends visible hanging off the sides and the back. I realized my hands were blocking what I was doing. So here is a better angle so you can see how I'm taking the needle and just kind of wiggling them under those back loops of the yarn and cutting off all of the excess. Some of the ends were a little short, so I would actually take the needle and wiggle it under halfway and then take the yarn and put it through the eye so I can pull it the rest of the way through. Now that the ends are all woven in, I have taken the loom, flipped it back over, flipped the fringe up, and removed the cardboard from the first half. I am carefully taking the warp strings and wiggling them off the ends. Some people like to cut them. I like to keep them in full loops, just cutting those middle strings that I missed. And now I am taking two loops next to each other and tying them like you would tie your shoes in a double knot. You do this so that the yarn doesn't slip down the warp string over time, and it just keeps everything nice and secure. With the second half, I'm actually doing the same thing of just taking the loop off the end of the loom, but I do end up cutting each loop in half because I'm still trying to figure out how I want to connect the two halves together into one long tapestry. Here I'm just removing the first half. You just pull the whole thing off since there's no tension anymore. And I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. What I end up doing is I take the cut ends of the top half and tying them through the loops at the top of the bottom half. I then take the same plastic needle and weave those cut ends up into the tapestry to secure everything. Now that the two halves are finally connected, I want to fill in this space with some scrap yarn. It will be covered up later so you won't see it, so the color doesn't really matter. This is just to help secure things and make things a little bit more stable. And I just quickly weave in those ends. Now I'm taking more of that sunset yarn and cutting it into shorter pieces. I'm going to create tassels, just like I did at the bottom, to cover up the scrap yarn so that you don't see it. I'm just adding in a few more pieces, and then I cut the tassels to length so that they don't cover up too much of the yarn below it. Last, I take a wooden dowel and wrap the string at the very top of the tapestry around it. I then take another piece of string and tie it to the ends so that it can be hung up on a wall. I do eventually shorten that string. And there you have it, a finished tapestry. The sky, the sunset, the clouds, flowers, water, grass, and all of that. Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this journey as I show you how I do tapestry weaving. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more tapestry weaving, crochet content, and maybe even sewing content. Thank you so much.